Alright, so welcome to the School for Ecocentric Evolution and Design Strategies. We're thrilled to be sitting here with Penny Livingston, a renowned teacher, permaculturist, visionary, and speaker. She's also a founder of the Regenerative Design Institute, which is a globally renowned educational organization with the vision that all people can live in mutually enhancing relationship with the earth. We've been inspired by the work that Penny's been doing for over 25 years in her career, and we're very honored to have the opportunity to lift up her story and her vision. So welcome, Penny, and thank you so much for taking this time.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad this was able to work out with your busy schedule and everything down here. We're in the amazing Cusco region, Sacred Valley of Peru. And you've been studying, correct me if I'm wrong, but permaculture for around 25 years. You studied from Bill Mollison, who was the founder of permaculture. How did you find yourself in that world at sort of like its inception point? And what has been your journey from that time to where you find yourself now?
Oh, wow. Well, my background, I'm a textile designer and then landscape art garden designer. And at the time, I was designing gardens for people. And then just something hit me where I just got really tired of sort of comforting the rich.
Right.
And making these gardens that people had like no real relationship with. Like they could sip their tea on their deck or their porch and look out to these gardens, but not be connected. And a friend of ours was hosting a permaculture training. And I had a gap in my schedule, so I actually didn't even really know what permaculture was. But what hooked me was community economics. Oddly, people think it's all about gardening and stuff, but it isn't. I mean, and I kind of know a lot about gardening. I don't need to go take a workshop on that. But yeah, the community economics piece somehow grabbed me, and I mean, I really didn't know what it was, and I was kind of joking, like, is it a new hairdo, or is it like gardening in Alaska? Like, what is permaculture? Like, this word is sort of like very abstract. And I went to this training, the 2-week, 72-hour plus course, and it brought me back to what I know as opposed to what I've been taught.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it brought me back to my own intuitive self in many ways. And it just made so much sense.
Right.
So when I got back, I made 2 commitments, that I would only go where I'm invited, and I would only speak if somebody asked.
Wow.
Because otherwise I would be like this woman on a mission, and people
Right.
would be like, oh, here she comes, she's going to talk about permaculture.
Right.
So I just decided to kind of self-facilitate, if people are interested, they'll ask. And so then what I did, instead of preaching and talking about it, I just started incorporating it in my work, incorporating it in my home. And I created this, like, it's 3/4 of an acre garden in my home that my son and his family, my grandbaby, all live, and they're working that system now. Years later, in the harvest of it. But I just started putting together this garden, and at the time I also had a bed and breakfast, so people could come to this little cottage and stay there, and then they'd walk around the garden. So it was also a form of activism.
Right.
Kind of not doing choir practice, but preaching. I mean, people could experience what it's like to live in a permaculture designed home. And and I actually had some people weep. I had a sheriff. One guy was a sheriff, and he just started weeping because it was giving him so much hope for the world, just to be in this garden. So, and I know you guys are studying with Jeff Lawton, but one of the things Jeff says that I love is he says, like, all problems can be solved in a garden. And I've been actually exploring that phrase, and he's right. He's absolutely right. Like, I can't think of anything that cannot be solved in a garden.
Can you give us a specific example, when you have it off of hand, of a problem that you've seen solved in your garden?
Well, like, community economics. I mean, you can totally do value added. You can create, like, I saw a guy one time in the suburbs where he had a little greenhouse, and he was starting little bedding plants. And he had a line coming out the back the yard, out the side gate, onto the street of people wanting to buy bedding plants.
Wow.
So he's not only making money, his cash register was just like
Right.
going off. He's making money, but also all these people are going home and planting heirloom vegetables, because it was all like rare varieties and super yummy, different kinds of squashes and different kinds of tomatoes he was growing. And he was like inoculating, the neighborhood
That's amazing.
with veggies. Like that's just one example that comes to mind. I could do the whole interview.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for that. Definitely. So it sounds like you didn't have like a particular vision for yourself of being a permaculture speaker, a teacher. Now you're involved in transformational festivals. You're down here in Peru. So what led to this sort of evolution? Where
you're spot on. Like if anybody ever told me that I would be speaking in front of hundreds of people
Right.
and traveling the world, I would have told them they were crazy. I was a very solitude. I'm a weaver, and that's a very solitary craft.
Right.
So I tend to like solitude a lot. Like
Sure.
I like being alone, and so all this stuff, this life is not what I had predicted for myself at all, and it
Right.
happened very quickly.
Yeah.
So, I had said like I'll only go where I'm invited, and
Right.
one of the personal things that happened for me, because I was doing land design by day, like I'm a landscape designer, and it takes a certain part of your brain to design. It's not exactly a right brain, it's kind of a left brain
Sure.
thing, because you're doing
Sure.
all this analysis and like taking all this information from the land. And it can be exhausting, like you can't do it. That's why designers get paid big bucks, because they can't do it 8 hours a day.
Sure.
But go to sleep at night, and in my dreams, I was always like, there was this invisible person next to me, and we'd be doing that process in my dreams.
Wow.
And I was not getting any rest.
Whoa, yeah.
And I'd wake up in the morning, and I'd be like, oh my God, I gotta go do this all day.
Yeah.
And it's like, I need a break. And so I basically made a commitment to spirit or whatever. I don't know, made a commitment. Okay, I'll do this. I'll commit my life to spreading the word about permaculture, and then I could get some rest.
Yeah.
And the dreams stopped,
Wow.
and I could
Wow.
sleep.
Wow.
I know my brain could like turn off.
That's really
It's
incredible.
crazy.
That
I know,
is
it's
really
weird.
crazy, and it's like pulling you towards something you didn't think, or maybe even had resistance to, and it was like, no, you got to accept this path for yourself.
Yeah,
You know?
and then what happens, and this this is kind of a takeaway for the listeners or viewers, is that when you're on your path, the doors just keep opening, and you just walk through the next door, and then another door will open, and you walk through the next door. I mean, I just recently got a website. Like I didn't even have a website. I haven't actually published anything. And so it's not. I'm not promoting myself and inserting myself into anything, but just people ask me to come, and I just say yes.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, that kind of like living in flow, and in living in flow and kind of accepting your soul task, it sounds like you found some respite, and the doors of abundance like continue to open for you in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we really want to lift up this current project that you're doing, but before that, just for like our listeners, and even for myself as someone who's been studying permaculture for like the last 4 years now, I've heard so many different definitions. So I don't know if you have your definition. I'm sure it's evolved if you want to talk about the evolution of your own
It's kind of a
definition.
long-running sentence.
Great, that sounds awesome.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, permaculture is a design science rooted in observation of natural ecosystems
Right.
that help humanity create human-based ecologies, or human settlements
Right.
that have the stability and the resiliency of a natural ecosystem.
Amazing. Yeah, and I love that we talk a lot about ecocentrism, like transitioning from an egocentric place of viewing the world.
The ecosystem needs to be
Yeah,
worked on.
definitely. We need to evolve past that and move towards an ecocentric where we understand that we are nature and that our collaboration with nature can actually bring out more like abundance. So I love that definition of permaculture as like using design science, like really understanding, because we can get in the way.
Yeah.
You know, like we've seen that.
Yes.
And so we have to be smart and intelligent about how we're designing.
Right.
You know, and then to create, to mold our settlements with the natural environment, natural ecosystem, to create health for all beings.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, and eco, I mean, the root of eco comes from the Greek oikos, which means home. So it's really about like understanding our home and managing our home,
Right.
you know, and which is about place. And so, you know, so that's why permaculture, in all senses, whether it's economic, energy, food, shelter, community, it's all rooted in place.
Yeah.
And the land.
Amazing.
Yeah. So to uplift this project here a little bit, we were so blessed to be a part of just a small piece of this multi-day event that you and Rising Appalachia and Reviveolution, which is a local nonprofit here, collaboratively created. This mixture of musical activism, of permaculture and regenerative design, and of Indigenous stewardship and leadership. We're really curious how this collaboration came to be and what you hope the lasting impact may be for the communities and individuals.
Wow, that's a big question. Well, I taught a permaculture training here in the valley, in Arin, the village of Arin, about 4 years ago, I think. 3 or 4 years ago, I can't remember. There was a man who had been living with us we had a permaculture education center in California, and he's from Australia, but he was living with us for, I don't know, 6 months to a year, and then fast forward, that was probably 12 years ago, and then fast forward to 4 years ago, he invited me to come teach permaculture training, and I'm always about like, can you reach out to the local community? And he did a pretty good job of it. But there was a Quechua man who's a leader here, and then he was at this event the other day. But he's kind of almost a liaison between the local governance here and the federal government. He's an elder, beautiful, wise man, and he attended the whole course, really was engaged, and he just shared with the president of the water commission or the water collective here, and the mayor of Boran, and a number of, I'll just call them the jefes, the chiefs, leaders. He said, I took this course of 15 days, and it changed my life. And he has since incorporated it in a place called Casita Boran, where he go and rent, and he's given that to his daughter, and so she's carrying that, and it's all organic, and they've got all kinds of different permaculture systems, harvesting water. They've got a whole, a lot of agroforestry systems, and then they're growing their corn. But corn is such a heavy feeder here that what's happening is, in a lot of places, is they just spray chemicals, like fertilizers and stuff, and pesticides, and they just like grow corn, pull up, and then spray chemicals, more corn, spray chemicals. They don't feed the land back again, and so the soil here is the ideal type of soil, but it's depleted.
Definitely.
And so then last year, 4 years ago, I met Carolyn Putnam, and who's the founder of Reviveolution, and she's very much integrated into a Caro family. She's married to a Caro man, and his father happens to be this kind of teacher of spiritual wisdom, and so she's become the translator for him. And so they've traveled all over the world. She helps, just facilitate, because he actually doesn't read or write. He barely speaks Spanish. He's Quechua, speaks Quechua. And so so she's really embedded authentically in the culture. And through that experience, she has been taught how to conduct herself, and she's learned a lot about cultural sensitivity and just what are the issues here from the Indigenous perspective, because she's living.
Right.
But she's like she's been called a chacaruna in Quechua. That means a bridge person, So she's a bridge and a translator. And I've seen Juan Gabriel, the elder, maestro, the teacher, really acknowledge her, and he's very grateful for her because she has opened so many doors for him to share his knowledge. And there's a really longing and yearning for this. So he teaches a lot about how to spiritually feed the earth, but then it's also how do we physically, you know, it's just like our bodies. Like we need to not only spiritually feed ourselves, but we need to feed our bodies too, because I mean, I suppose you can get very spiritual if you're suffering because your body is not healthy, but, you know, we need to feed our body. And so the way I've been able to explain this to a lot of the indigenous people is equating the body with the earth, because it's the same thing. I mean, like, our bodies are 70% water, the earth is 70% water. Our bodies rely on our gut flora of millions of microorganisms, and the earth relies on that in the soil. So the soil in many ways is kind of the mouth and the gut of the earth. Sometimes we consider it the skin, but I think the plants are more like, really function more like our skin functions. It breathes, you know, processes and purifies things and releases toxins and absorbs toxins, and just like our skin. So the soil is more like our gut. And if we're spraying pesticides, it would be just like drinking poison. It would kill us, you know. So I was explaining like why, if you're going to have like a gray water system and you want to release the water back into the earth again, you can't give it Clorox or bleach. Like the one thing, don't put it down your drain, just don't use it. And people were a little bit like, because they like to use bleach, but you don't need to. I mean, I've never gotten sick. I don't use bleach. You know, you don't have to. It's not an essential thing. I mean, soap, that the earth can process. The microorganisms can break down soaps, but they can't break down bleach. It will kill them. So you're compromising your system simply by just using bleach, and then of course pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and fertilizers are just, it's destroying the microbes of the earth, which is like our gut. And also equating like wetlands is like the liver and the kidney of our body. It's the one that really, you know, sucks out toxins. And if we remove our wetlands, we're basically cutting out our liver and our kidney. So people can understand it a little more because it's not so abstract.
Exactly. So did you see some of the, you had a day just recently where you brought a lot of farmers together. Did you see some of that, this truce like taking root in a way in which there might be some follow-up action?
Yeah, people were very skeptical, I think, you know, and it was kind of sprung on the community. They didn't really, because they were having a water, it's like a water keeper. They're going to have a water festival, and how perfect is that?
Totally.
So Caroline talked to the organizers, and they decided to have it on the same day. So after their meeting, we kind of showed up, kind of waiting at the garden gate, and you know, then when the right time we came in, and that Quechua man I was mentioning, Mario from Guaran, he was there. And we brought chicha and corn that Carolyn grew organically, because it's like, does your spirituality grow corn? Is the question. And hers does. And she had brought this beautiful, you know, choclo, I think it's the big corn seeds. And so they brought a whole bunch of corn and potatoes and everything that was grown here in an organic garden. And so that they got to see that. And then just the whole notion of really, we talked a lot about how to clean water. But we also talked about the ecosystem as a, you know, how important the microbes are to supporting life on Earth. And by spraying chemicals, we kill them. It's an equal opportunity killer. It doesn't just kill the beneficial, the pathogenic bacteria, it kills everything. And I think a lot of people really, really got it. And then also, one thing I didn't mention was, I did a PDC that Caroline organized last year, a year ago. And in that course, we had about 10 farmers, organic farmers that attended the course. And one of them is a teacher at a school, Mauru, he's a farmer, and he's just a light. You got to see, and he's become like the permaculture teacher of the valley now. And he's, you know, knows how to explain things. He speaks Quechua and Spanish, So he can explain things in a way people can understand. He's very accessible and very charismatic and knows how to tell stories, which is part of what being a teacher is about.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that happened there was I came here, because I'm from away, I'm not from here. And I don't know anything really about this place, but I just know what I see.
Right.
And so I said, I come here and you have the climate, the best climate ever. I mean, it's like apples to like Zapote, like subtropical to temperate. Here, 2 hours away, you have the jungle, so you got your mangoes and your coconuts and your bananas not too far away. So you've got like all these different climates here to grow anything, basically. So you've got that. You're the home of the superfoods, maca and yacon and oca and Inca berry, it's this big gooseberry kind of that's now being dried and sold as superfood. So lots of, nutritious food. Water is just pouring out of the mountainsides. You see it everywhere you go, springs and just wet meadows everywhere. Crazy water coming from California. I'm just like water envy. And the soil here is this colluvial glacial tilth soil. So they've got that. They've got everything. And I said, you have all of this. And what I'm hearing are stories of malnutrition and poverty. And I'm like, what? Oh, what? Why? And then we launched on the course. And at the end of the permaculture design course, you do a design project. And we had all the Quechua farmers in one group just so they could speak, that you didn't have to go through translation issues, so they could work together. And they did their project. They designed this whole system for some land that was there. And then at the end, this one man said, Penny, I just want to thank you. He said, we have been colonized so long that we forgot how rich we are.
Wow.
We have adopted this mentality of poverty, and now we see how rich we are, because they all have land. I mean, if you go to the United States, how many people, anybody who has land is rich there now. But it's here, the mentality. And he says, we realize how rich we really are. And once you just change that story, that's the most important piece. The filter between our ears is what cleanses us.
Definitely.
And then another woman, a farmer, said, so many people come here and they just take. But you came and you brought new ideas, and we're going to do this. And at the time, it was a lot of the farmers were women, and they said, sometimes we get really confused because we're friends, but then we're in the farmer's market and we're competing with each other. So I feel bad sometimes if I see my friend selling vegetables and they're coming to her booth and not my booth. And I said, no, you start cooperating with each other and work together and support each other, because the demand for organic food is going up, and there's no reason why you can't sell everything you grow. And since then, they have done that. They have a community-supported agriculture thing where they deliver veggie boxes all around the valley, and they're selling everything they grow.
That is so amazing.
So that's, to me, that's to answer your other question, you're like, what are your goals? What do you want to see happen? I want to see eco-literacy happen. I want the people here to remember who they are as Indigenous people here. Because not only is it important for the Indigenous nations to not forget who they are and remember who they are as Indigenous people, it's not only important for them, but it's important for us as Western industrialized culture people, for them to remember who they are. It's important for us. Just like it's important to them for us to remember who we are as humans. Like what it means to be human, and for us to remember what it means to, be connected to the earth, to develop our level of eco-literacy as people who have a culture that has been so disconnected from the earth. So we've kind of come up with one of the ideas we had for this event that I've been hearing now is the idea of radical remembrance, like for us to remember. Because we've been asleep, and it's almost like we could be given some kind of amnesia drug. We forgot who we are, and the Indigenous people have been holding it down to great, cost because they've been assaulted because of that.
Yes, again and again.
Again and again. And but they're not giving up. You know, their level of adaptability and resiliency is amazing. And so that's why often in permaculture we often look to the indigenous people to like help us remember. And those some people are like, no, you know, you're not indigenous, forget it. Like, you know, you did all this stuff to us, your ancestors did all genocide and we don't want anything to do with you. You're getting what you deserve. And then other people are like, no, it's serving all of humanity and all of creation and including non-human beings on the earth for us to, it's a blessing to be, for us to reach out to indigenous people, like, help us, remember, like, teach us. And so the people like Juan Gabriel, like, he sometimes gets criticized for sharing this knowledge with people, but with, you know, international people, whatever, but he feels the same way. It's like, no, it's not going to serve us to keep our knowledge to ourselves. It's into all of the benefit of all of people for us to share. And just like me sharing what I know about, like, how to grow corn without vegetables, without chemicals, you know, I'm also learning how to feed the earth spiritually from him, and so it's a beautiful exchange. Yeah.
Yes. It's such a balance, isn't it, between taking responsibility and being able to help repair the harm that has been done over the last 500 years and longer, between, like, interculturally, and to have a vision in our urgent times of how we need to move forward and all share the wisdoms that we have. And so we took a lot at Seeds around the world we know is possible in terms of a world of some of the themes you've talked about, of collaboration, of healing on all scales, starting internally in terms of our own landscapes, between each other in terms of being able to find understanding and exchange knowledge, in terms of localized communities that have sovereignty economically and food production wise and in a lot of other ways can create abundance, and then also in alignment with larger solidarity issues. And I'm curious for you, based on your career in this world, like, what would you see as the world that's possible? What's your vision? What does that look like or feel like if we were able to adapt a permaculture ideology and practices?
Like in an ideal scene or
Yes.
reality?
Yeah.
In an
Ideal.
ideal.
Well, greed would become a thing of the past.
Yes.
I think greed and insecurity and the scarcity, fear of not having enough, and greed and ego are the kingpin of what's destroying us. I'm going to go out on a limb and also say a lot of our religious practices. For example, Juan Gabriel, the teacher, the maestro here, he accepts, he had a kind of a life-changing event when he went to some sort of conference of a number of different spiritual leaders from all over the world. So there's Buddhism, and there's the Native American, and the Lakota, and then Southwest, you know, many different kind of spiritual worldviews, just in the United States among the indigenous people, and then, you know, Bolivia, and, you know, Japan, and all these different places. And he saw that there's many ways to express your spiritual belief and practices. And he has his, and other people have theirs, and he accepts all of it. He basically says, you know, whatever you, whatever speaks to you, as long as you're, you know, sort of connecting spirit to the earth. And he also acknowledged that there's a lot of people that it's like, if it's my way or the highway, kind of in spirit, like Christianity is definitely that. Like, if you're not for us, then you're against us. And that dualistic thinking came out of that historically. So many people in Western industry, you know, because it's spread so far all over the earth, that there's this dualistic thinking. That now, like, if you don't agree with me, then you're like my enemy. And it's like, no, you don't agree with me. Hallelujah, good for, like, it makes the world go around. Like, there's diversity in thinking. Yes,
We can
awesome.
learn from each other.
We can learn from each other, and you don't think the same way I do. Good.
And
I don't want everybody to think the way I do. It would be very boring. Everybody just
Completely.
agreed with each other all the time.
Yes.
So you know, so that, you know, I'm of that, you know, thinking that it's a both and conversation rather
Yes.
than either or.
Yes.
And it's sad because I think about poor Jesus Christ and what they've done in his name and the atrocities that have been, people murdered and genocide all in the name of God.
Yep.
What? Like that was not his message.
Exactly.
And so it's a tragedy of, the history of how we've gotten to where we are now. I mean, to be honest, I actually point to fundamentalism. I think it's really it.
Exactly.
Is like, if you're not with me, then you're against me.
Right.
Kind of thinking is part of the cause.
Yes.
So my vision is people becoming aware that we're all related. Not only are we related with humans, but the non-human world, that
Yes.
we're all made of meat. We're all going to become plant food someday. And to start being a family
Yes.
again, and cooperating with each other and loving each other and appreciating and respecting each other, because we know how to clean water, we know how to grow food without chemicals, we know how to build non-toxic buildings, we know how to do renewable, we know all the technology, we've got it, but why aren't we doing it?
Exactly.
Why isn't the
Exactly.
world set up this way? Why is it this extractive, greedy, short-term gain type thinking? Why is that happening now? And I believe it's greed, insecurity, and a lot of it around our spiritual worldview. Those three things. And if we could just change that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But that's not possible, I don't
Yeah,
think,
Right.
if you
in
could
reality.
help mature or help develop individually and collectively, spiritually and psychologically, it sounds like you have the vision that could help us move towards some of the solutions. As Bill Mollison said, like, the problems are very complex, but the solutions are embarrassingly simple and
Yeah.
easy. So
Exactly.
maybe if we could support maturation and development, then that
Yeah.
could help us move towards some of the practices that are right there in front of us.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to figure out, the whole festival culture.
Right.
Like, I get called in to teach workshops. And there's a lot of transformational work going on in festivals. And but where is it that we want to go? Like, what's the goal?
Right.
And a lot of it really is learning how to think outside of the box. Like Einstein said, a problem can't be solved by the thing thinking that
Right.
created it.
Exactly.
So I think that's part of, in the festival culture, and a lot of the youth coming up, a lot of us in my generation are going, save us from ourselves. And the youth are going like, wait, we're confused too.
Trying to find ourselves.
Yeah, we're trying to find ourselves. Yeah. But there is kind of an emergent transformation that's happening that people of my generation don't understand, right? And the people that are in it can't see it yet.
Right.
And I have hope there. Like, that's where my hope lies. Because I think that, I can be a teacher of, like, ecosystem, or, like, earth-based skills, which is essential.
Yes.
But then this new thinking, this new paradigm that's emerging, and technology probably has a lot to do with it too, that it's still very unpredictable where it's going to go.
Yeah.
But I hope that it can be used to help connect people to themselves and to each other and to the land, ultimately. It's almost like the earth becoming more connected to herself.
Yeah.
In the internet, like, can be part of that, like synapses.
Definitely.
But is technology going to rule us, or who's serving who? And it's probably, again, both and. I see also a lot of negative things happening because of technology, and disconnection happening because of technology, and phones, and everybody on their phone. And the military could come along and just wipe out all your data. What are you going to do?
Exactly.
Talk about disembodied, be like, ah!
Right.
But if you don't have, like, real relationships with people in your place, you're lost. So you can have your Facebook and whatever cell, connection, but if you don't have real FaceTime, that is not an app, like, now you can't even say FaceTime, it's an app. that you can have real relationships. If you have that in your life, then you're much more resilient. So community resiliency is really about developing relationships locally in your physical place of where you live.
Exactly. It's like, I see it as a possibility here, where technology arose out of us and we are nature, so the earth can teach each other really, really fast through this interconnection. And then we can take that information, and right now what I feel this pull is this like initiation process. This like, how do we move out of the story of separation to the story of interconnection? Now that we have all the knowledge, you can look up anything you want on the internet.
know, the world
you can
is at your
find anything,
fingertips.
like psychology, old ancient texts, esoteric, like anything you want, you can find it there.
It's amazing.
It's really amazing. You can connect with people. We were talking to you and connected, made this happen here.
And you're studying from a man in
And studying from
Australia.
a man in Australia, but I see that as a really unique time. Like, this is a very unique time in which we could take advantage of that, but it's about bringing that down into the earth, like you're saying. And so I guess maybe one of the final questions we have for you is, what are some practical tips, now that we're in the visionary, place, and so that ideological place, what are some of the practical steps we can take now for our listeners and for us to move towards that vision, whether that's just like permaculture practices on the ground or spiritual practices or whatever? Any advice that you have for us to bring that in?
Simple. I would say take a permaculture class.
Yeah.
My little elevator speech, anybody who's in a position of decision making, power, leadership, politics, should have, it doesn't have to be the 72-hour, 2-week, whatever course, but just even a truncated version to learn how to think in an interconnected way. I think that's one of the best gifts that permaculture, through its principles, bring us back to. A lot of Indigenous people or people living it are kind of like, oh, duh. But they don't need that.
Yes.
They don't need that because they're living it. It's implicit in their life. But we need that to actually put words on things to start connecting the dots and becoming eco-literate is what I'm going to say. So learn permaculture, become ecologically literate. Like ecology is about the study of our home, the study of our place. Like learn that. Learn what are the native plants, like what do they do, what are their gifts. Like there's a whole kingdom, they used to call it kingdom, but we took the G out, because we're all related, with the plant world. Like learn plants, and who are your non-human neighbors, like who are they, who lives around you. So like, for example, where I was living in Northern California, the monarch butterflies, they used to migrate to Baja California. Their habitat got wiped out. So now they migrate to north of San Francisco and they stay there. So I started planting butterfly food. Milkweed, Asclepias, is like their favorite plant in the world. So I just plant that for them because I know they need it, because their ecosystems have been demolished in other places. So learn who your neighbors are. And who are the migrators, who are the pollinators, and make food for them too. We call it the flyby cafe, or garden, so that they, and it's not just about native plants, it's about functional plants that serve a purpose. And now with climate change, certain whole ecosystems are being wiped out. If you actually have a plant in your garden that might have been growing in a Mediterranean region that might have gotten wiped out, or in North Africa or wherever, your garden can become like a biobank of saving species. So I'm not a native plant only person. No permaculturist is.
Right.
We're not plant fascists.
Right.
And we don't demonize the plants. Like, oh, it's invasive. Well, maybe it's opportunistic, like many of us are. But then, okay, if it's invasive, how can we use it? What are the gifts? Let's harvest it. To keep it at bay. There's all kinds of solutions. Solutions are there, like you said, or like Bill said, embarrassingly simple solutions to very complex problems. And so just learning that and developing that vision and those skills is, where you live.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing about home on all levels. I just feel like that's such a theme of this conversation, and the importance of being at home within ourselves and being at home with each other, being at home with the earth and our particular bioregion. And it's really beautiful because I think it's so relatable to all of us. those feelings of competition and insecurity and scarcity that you brought up can be healed in so many ways by a true felt sense
Trusting,
of home,
learning to trust.
belonging, true belonging.
And forgiveness.
Yes, forgiveness.
We didn't mention trust and forgiveness. Those are two
Yes,
things that we
yes.
could incorporate in our own lives to
Yes.
forgive ourselves,
Definitely.
forgive others,
Mm-hmm.
trust ourselves,
Yes.
trust others,
Yes.
and
then-
be discerning instead of judgmental.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful, and the actual teachings of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
yeah.
Fundamentally.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
yes.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, for your
welcome.
wisdom, for your gifts, for planting these seeds in these places and allowing them to flourish. Continue doing the good work, and I hope we stay in touch over
Yeah.
time.
Great.
Yeah.